So real estate business, right? If you're getting a license in real estate, you should know what the real estate business is about, right? Okay. Can anybody tell me what the real estate business is about? Let me know in the chat. Meanwhile, what do you think is the real estate business?
In buying or selling properties.
Anything that's involving buying or selling properties, that's the real estate business. Okay. Guys, I'm waiting on the chat. Let me know in the chat. You have to participate. Okay. So what do you think is the real estate business? I will address it in a second, but I want to know your opinion. So Alex said that anything that involves buying or selling real estate, right? What do we have here? McDonald's is one. I'll address that. Nadia says investing. Nika says buy and sell properties. Masha says any business relating to demolition, investments, or sales of lands, anything involving land, self-marketing and investing, rentals. Thank you, Steve. Any exchange of real estate deal, anything has to do with buying, selling, or investing in real estate. And Coney says investing, buying, selling, rentals, and building. Very good. So, yeah, real estate is more than just buying or selling. Okay. Real estate could be property management. Real estate could be development, right? So anything that has to do with either building on the land, right, or exchanging hands, whether it be sale, buying, or renting, right? So that is real estate. Guys, let me know if you can see the text. If not, I will change the setup for tomorrow's class now. You can see it, you're good? All right. All right, got a few people saying yes, a few people saying no. It's blurry. Okay, I got a few people saying it's blurry. All right, so I'm going to zoom in real quick. Is it better that way? I feel like I'm at the eye doctor right now. Cover one eye. Let me know if it's better. All right, cool. So this is what I recommend. If you can, I sent you the chapters, download them. Like Shanice was saying, it's a little blurry, but I downloaded the book. So make sure you have that with you, and then I'll change the way this looks for the next classes, okay? But I'm going to read it off to you anyway. So real estate deals are everywhere. That's one of the things that I was just mentioning. Real estate transactions occur when a commercial leasing company rents small space or a building owner rents an apartment. The most common transaction is buying or renting of a home, whether it's by a first-time buyer, someone seeking a larger home, or an investor interested in properties, income-producing potential, right? Buyers, sellers, tenants, landlords, investors, and developers use real estate services. Almost everyone here has a real estate transaction, right? Because you live somewhere, right? You live somewhere. So there was a real estate transaction somehow. For you to get into a home, right? You either part of that transaction or dragged into the transaction somehow. So those of you that have babies on camera, the baby was dragged into the transaction, right? They're part of it. They live somewhere, right? So they have rights in that property. Now, all this adds up to many trillions of dollars in transactions each year in the United States. Now, attorneys, bankers, trust companies, abstract and title companies, agents, architects, surveyors, accountants, tax experts, and many others are needed in addition to the buyers and sellers. So that's what I was addressing before. It's not just the buying or selling or the renting. There's a lot more happening in real estate. All these people rely on real estate professional skills. All right, let me go like this. Now, real estate is a business of many specializations. So despite its size and complexity, many people think real estate business is just brokers and salespeople, right? As I just addressed, real estate is much broader. It actually includes appraisals. So for an appraisal to exist, there has to be an appraiser, somebody that does the appraising, right? And we'll address that in a different chapter. There's property management. As I was saying before, it's not just the renting. A property manager will manage a transaction on behalf of the owner of the building. There's financing. Guys, we don't do financing. We are salespeople or brokers, right? Somebody else does the financing, which is a mortgage loan officer, right? Or a banker or a broker, but they do the financing. There's subdivision, development, home inspections, counseling, and obviously education. Now this is where I come in, right? Real estate professionals must understand, right? I'm trying to go as slow as I can with the screen so you guys can see it. Must understand specialized areas and their impact to succeed in this complex industry. Just a quick reminder, what we're going to go over, there's a particular chapter or a specific chapter for each topic, okay? Right now it's just an overview of the business. So we're going to talk about brokerage. Before we do anything with reading, I want you to tell me in the chat, what do you think brokerage is? Let me know in the chat, what is brokerage? What do you think?
Sure. But I think that it's like one of both the salesperson. The manager is,
Somebody above the salespersons, like a manager?
yeah,
Well, that would be a broker. What is a brokerage? Huh? Okay. Zavdi, change your chat settings to be for everyone, please. So what do we have? The company agent works for, okay? The one responsible for the transactions, that's again the broker. The brokerage holds a license in order to conduct real estate business, connects buyers and sellers. Emily, I'm going to hold on to that one. A business, Amaya, correct. Company that employs brokers. Umbrella company that holds all licenses. Shakira, nice way to think about it. Masha, a group of realtors utilizing the same resources. Okay. Where real estate agents are able to work under. Okay. All right. So brokerage. First of all, the word brokerage has nothing to do with real estate. Let's go with that. Even though we're going to address real estate brokerage in this book, right? But brokerage, the word brokerage means we're brokering a deal. What does it mean to broker a deal? Whether it's real estate or anything else, brokering a deal is you're the middle person, right? And there's somebody that has something that somebody else wants, and that somebody else wants that something that somebody has. To make it simple, right? Uber is a brokerage, right? Isn't Uber a brokerage? Does Uber have taxis? No. But they are a platform that brokers the need for taxis. So somebody wants to get a ride somewhere, Uber brokers the deal, finds somebody to drive them, right? Match them, and makes money off of it. Brokerage simply means finding a buyer, a seller, putting them together and getting paid for it. It's as simple as that. That's what brokerage is. Steven, that's funny. It's a glorified hustler. Love it. There you go. All right, so brokerage. Again, you find a buyer, find the seller, you're the one in between, match them, and get your money out of it, okay? You're like the real estate Cupid.
I don't know how to say language.
Yeah. That's what it is, right? You're an intermediary to the transaction. So you're the one that's putting the deal together. Let's put matchmaker. There you go. Yep, there you go. All right. Matchmaker. But we're talking about real estate brokerage. So if it's real estate brokerage, right, then what do? We find a buyer and a seller, or a landlord and a tenant of real estate, or for real estate, right? That's what we do. We're in between. We connect the buyer and the seller. Keywords. We connecting them. You got to remember this. We don't buy anything. We don't sell anything. Okay? We're the Amazon of real estate. We're the Uber of real estate. We're the Netflix of real estate, right? Even though Netflix now has their own movies. So, but the point is, yeah, they do. So the point is we connect people, right? Got to remember that. What is your job when you have a seller? Can anybody tell me now that I said this? I'll address that in later on as well, Stephen. There are brokers for the seller and brokers for the buyer, correct? But we're still the professionals in between. So that's what I was asking. If you're the broker for the seller, Stephen, what is your job? What are you responsible for doing? To help your clients, finding buyers, to find a buyer. Do the best you can for the seller. I'll address that later on too, because sometimes we don't have to be the best, depending on the type of representation we have. We just have to be. It gets confusing, but I'll explain that later. And within the law, of course. All right. So if you're helping a buyer, if you're a broker for the buyer or a salesperson for the buyer, right? What is your job? What do you have to do for that buyer? What is your job? Find the house, connect the seller to the buyer, find the house. Okay. Very good. So that's something you guys have to remember, put in your notes somewhere. We don't buy real estate. We don't sell real estate. As a salesperson or a broker, of course, right? You can buy your own real estate. We don't buy real estate. We don't sell real estate. We help a seller sell and we help a buyer buy. That's it. We help a seller sell. So addressing I think, yeah, Stephen, addressing Stephen's comment, there are brokers for the seller and brokers for the buyer. I could be a broker for both. Okay, I could represent both. We'll also talk about this at a later time. But yes, if I'm a broker for the seller, my job is to help the seller sell. Sometimes people answer, oh, to sell. Our job is to sell. No, the seller's job is to sell. Our job is to connect them to the buyer that wants that property. If you represent the buyer, is your job to buy? No, your job is to connect the buyer to a seller that wants to sell the house that he's looking for. Simple as that. These are a few key things that you need to remember. Okay, a few key things you need to remember when reading the questions in the exam. They make it very, very tricky. Okay, now a licensed real estate broker. What he or she does is negotiate the sale, the purchase, right, or rental of a property. A broker can be an individual or a business that is licensed to buy, sell, exchange, or lease real estate for others, right? Real estate for others, and to charge a fee. We are licensed, okay, that's the other keyword here, licensed to do any of these. We are licensed to do so. If I'm not licensed, and my cousin wants to buy a house, can I help my cousin buy a house? I'm not licensed. Can I help my cousin buy a house? Let me know in the chat. Everybody's saying no, and Laura says not legally. Says who? You're telling me I cannot help my cousin? You're going somewhere with that one. I can help. I can make the deal. I can do anything I want, and nobody can tell me otherwise. As long as I'm not charging a fee. As long as I'm not charging a fee. That's another key thing you need to remember. If we're not making anything out of this transaction, if we're doing it because, hey, I love my cousin, right? That's it. I'm not charging anything. I'm not exchanging, not even services, right? Then I do not need a license. I can help them legally, okay, and lawfully. But the moment there's an exchange of value, right, and we'll address this again in a later chapter, but the moment there's an exchange of value, right? Let's say my cousin goes like, look, I got no money, but I have a car in the garage that, hey, I don't use it, so can that be your commission? Boom. If I'm getting a car, so it's not only money. If I'm getting a car out of this transaction, I'm helping out my cousin and I'm getting a car out of this transaction, then technically I'm getting paid. If I'm getting paid, I need a license. You guys got it? If you're getting paid, you need a license. All right. Now that's a broker. The broker is the only one that can charge the fee. As a salesperson, can you charge a fee? No. What you can do is work for or with the broker, as a sales associate or associate licensee. That's it. Work for or with. We'll go more in details on this later on, but you don't get paid by the client or the customer. You don't get paid by the seller or the buyer. You get paid by your broker because you work for or with your broker. Okay. All right. Now, a real estate licensee is somebody who has met the state mandated licensing requirements, which you're seeing here right now. You're doing 75 hours. That's a requirement. You're going to have to pass the school exam, get a certificate so you can go to state exam. That's another requirement. You have to do your fingerprints. That's another requirement. Now, these requirements, they vary from state to state, right? So when we get to the state portion of this course, we'll go more in detail on what are the actual requirements for New Jersey, okay? In some states, every real estate licensee is a broker. Pleasure. But only a managing broker, so these are terms that change from state to state as well. Only a managing broker can hire sales associates and is responsible for their conduct. All right, so you got to check state laws for those requirements. Appraisal. Quick question. What do you guys know about appraisal? What is an appraisal? Guys, make sure you have your camera on and that you are on camera and participating and not driving around. If you're driving around, it does not count towards your hours. Okay. Appraisal, value an item, determine the value of a property, increase the value on the property. Okay, that's appraising in value, yes. Jefferson, please change your chat settings. How much of house's value at compared location? Determine the value of the property. All right. All right, so here's, say it louder. The characteristics of a property as well. They go into the appraisal, of course. So let me ask you something. The only thing I have is Windex here to use right now. But can you guys see this? Can you see the Windex bottle? You can? Okay, great. So here's what I want to address. What is appraisal? Appraisal, and we have a whole chapter on this again. Appraisal is opinion of value. Why is it an opinion of value? Why is it an opinion of value? So some of you are writing about, determine the value of the property. That's great, of course. But is it a factual value? No, it's an opinion. Why is it an opinion? We are all looking at the same bottle, right? Now, you guys at home, you have the same view, which is this one. Your view is this one, right? You have a different view because you're at an angle. Me, this is my view, the back of it, right? Now, don't get me wrong, when we go to a house, we see that all the corners of the house, right? But again, our perception is different. Every property has a different value to the buyer, to the seller, and even to the appraiser. As professionals, we try to come up with what would be the most likely be the price of or the value of the property. Okay, so it's an opinion. Now, the value that we give as individuals, right, as a buyer or seller, is not based on facts, is based on emotions, right? The value the real estate professionals give to a property is also based on emotions. That's why an appraisal versus just a comparable or market valuation, an appraisal is conducted by a third party that's not related to the seller or the buyer. So, and they're based on established methods and the appraisal's professional judgment, and I want you to write opinion, okay, professional judgments, right? So, hold on a second. Got somebody ringing the bell, but I don't think there's anybody in the office right now. Just give me 1 second, guys. Nobody else here. All right, so what was I saying? Real estate professionals, so the brokers and salespeople, right? We must understand the valuation process. So we don't have to be professionals at it, right? But we need to understand the process itself, right? And we may be asked to estimate the property selling price, right? Which is what we do. We come up with values, as I mentioned before. But most lenders, they require an actual professional appraisal. Most lenders say, hey, your opinion is good, but you represent the seller, or your opinion is good, but you represent the buyer. So again, we want that third party to give us a value. We want somebody that will look at it from the lender standpoint versus from the emotional seller or the emotional buyer. Okay. All right, hold on a second, guys. All right. Stephen wrote, but before the appraisal. Stephen wrote, but before the appraisal. So, the value that we give, don't we as salespeople have to give our client a value to sell it for? So again, it's opinions. The difference between ours and an appraiser, right? The difference between ours and appraiser is that ours is based on the market study, and it's a superficial value, and the appraiser goes based on established methods, right, of appraising. So it's a more in-depth valuation of the property. Property management, I'm going to go real quick. We already talked about briefly over property management. We have a section of a chapter just for that. But a property manager pretty much maintains and manages an owner's property, right? And obviously tries to bring up the value of that property. So if we manage it properly, it will increase value, right? Hiring a property manager relieves the owner of day-to-day tasks like finding new tenants, collecting rents, finishing or altering tenant space, ordering repairs, and maintaining the property. The manager's duties are outlined in owner management agreements. Hi. Just give me 1 second, guys. Yes.
I was asking for the rental agency, real estate agent.
This is the real estate agency.
Yeah, so it does rent apartments.
We do, but I don't have anybody here right now.
Not anybody here.
No, because right now you're in the school section. The real estate, somebody, I think the last person just left like 10 minutes ago.
So you guys have phone numbers for us?
Yes, when you go out, there's a bunch of business cards. Pick one.
Thank you.
You- No problem, no problem. Have a good one. So where was I? The property manager's main job is to protect and maximize the owner's investment, right? And depending on the specific size of the property and the scope of the work, the property manager may also need a state-issued real estate or property management license. Now, not all property managers, even in New Jersey, even though this says depending on state law, in New Jersey, for instance, not all property managers need a license. It all depends. You don't have to write this down because we'll get to that chapter of the New Jersey portion. But I just want to point out something. When you represent somebody, right, you either do it directly or indirectly. So if you're my employee, let's say it's my building and you're my employee, you don't need a license to manage the property because you are me. If you're a third party, let's say a company that manages real estate for other people, right? So we go back to who needs a real estate license, right? Anybody that's charging a fee for managing other people's property. But in this case, you're not a salaried employee, you're independent contractor that's finding a tenant for a landlord, right? Now you need to have a license. Okay, if you're a salaried employee of the owner of the building, that's it. Then you're managing for that owner only. You got it? But once you're outside of it and you're managing for other people, different people, you're a third party. You're a third party and you're charging a fee, you need to have a license. Okay. Financing. So financing provides the funds for real estate sales transactions. Most sales are financed by loans secured by mortgages or deeds of trust, which I'll explain the differences between these two later on. Real estate financiers may work in commercial banks, thrifts or credit unions, mortgage banks, or even mortgage brokerages. Federal law requires that mortgage loan originators register with the nationwide multi-state licensing system and registry, or most commonly known as NMLS. So the same way that we have to be licensed by the state, right? So by the real estate commission, right? Loan officers have to be registered with the federal NMLS. All right. So I cannot lend you money or be part of a lending transaction or financing transaction if I'm not licensed and registered with this entity. Okay. Just in case some of you decide to do loans as well, you want to go into the mortgage career, you have to go through them. Subdivision and development. So subdividing a property creates smaller parcels. So you have one large parcel and we divide into smaller ones. That's subdivision. Site preparation and construction are part of the development, and both on-site and off-site improvements are possible. Off-site improvements like water lines and storm sewers that serve the new development, while on-site improvements to individual parcels will be obviously the new homes, recreational amenities, and so on. So off-site are things leading to the subdivision, and off-site and on-site are the things we build or raise specifically for that subdivision. Subdivision and development are related, but they're separate processes, right? Because I can buy just land, right? Let's say I'm buying land, right? And I'm going to cut it into pieces. Now I have 8 lots. From 1 lot, I turn it into 8. That's subdivision. If I don't build anything on it, that's all it is. So development happens after a subdivision. Does that make sense? They're related because for development to exist, there has to be subdivision of the land. They're related, but they're not the same. And we also have, like I said, a chapter for that. Home inspections. All right, question. What is a home inspection? Why do we need it? What is a home inspection and why do we need it? Alex, you're reading? Without reading, guys, I want to know what you know about this business.
Things goes to see how is the condition of the property. If everything is okay.
Somebody to go see the condition of the property, see if everything is okay. Just any someone? Any someone? Because I can go see it and see if it's
So
okay.
someone I don't know how, what is the law here, someone that maybe prepared,
Somebody that's prepared for it? You mean licensed for it?
yeah,
Okay, got it. All right, cool. Let's see what we got here. To see any problems with the property beforehand, to check if homes are safe. There you go. To make sure the house is not going to fall apart. Absolutely. Safety, so you know what you're buying. To make sure the home is suitable. To check damage in the house. Will it pass a CO or is in violation of the code? Laura, gonna hold on to that one to mention in a second. CO. For safety and to be able to purchase a home to sell, to find any structural damage, to know if there's any issues with the home prior to purchasing, to ensure the home is safe and functional prior to purchase, to make sure that there are no issues with the property, licensed professional that makes sure the house is safe to purchase, and so on. So it appears to be pretty much the same. Let's address a CO. Milton, make sure you change your chat settings, please. For the mortgage agent to lend you money? No. So we'll address that in financing. Mortgage companies usually require that the home inspection is completed along with other requirements, so they can lend you money. So yes, Milton, that could happen. But the reason why we do home inspection is mainly for the potential buyer, right? Not only the potential buyer, the seller should also be aware of the current structure, right? So a home inspector is somebody that's licensed to inspect the property for its defaults, right? So any issues that the property might have. We will again address it better in the later chapter, but us as realtors, we just do a visual inspection. Like, yeah, it looks good, right? That's it, right? And we should make suggestions based on what we see. While home inspectors will analyze the property for any structural issues as well, which we don't see most of the times. Now, Laura, you mentioned CO, right? A CO is a certificate of occupancy, and that is issued by a town, right? I'm talking about home inspection. I'm talking about home inspection as far as a buyer or a seller goes, or as Milton said, for lending goes, right? There's another type of inspection that's issued by a town, but not all municipalities require a CO. That's why I skipped the whole CO thing. There's two types of inspections. There's the one done privately for the purchase or the sale, and there's the one done by the municipality. The one done by the municipality is going to give you a CO or a certificate of occupancy, but that's based on their rules. Some of them, they go like, hey, unless you're building something new, we don't care. Or unless you're altering. If you're changing from one person to another, you don't need a CO. Other towns, they say, used to be Laura's, now it's Emily. Now we need to do a CO before that happens, because I don't know what Laura did with the property. Does that make sense? So there's two types of inspections. When we talk about home inspections, usually we talk about the inspectors for private for the private transaction, okay, or on the private side. Okay. So a professional home inspector will survey the property structure, systems, just like the township inspector will do, and site conditions, and prepares an analytical report. Tongue twister. The inspector looks for deterioration, water intrusion, mechanical, and other problems from the chimney to the basement, so the whole property. The home inspector may recommend additional testing when a property condition, such as mold damage or insect infestation, warrants it or needs it, right? So here's the difference between a home inspector and the city inspector. Here's the biggest difference. The city inspector will not recommend, they'll just reject you. They'll say, hey, there's mold. Hey, there's electrical problems. Fail, resolve it. That's it. Where a home inspector, just like us, is a consultant. Okay, a home inspector will say, hey, based on what I saw, these are the suggestions or suggested actions, things you should do to fix the problems. Okay,
Just one question.
yes.
Why these things are needed or
So that's what I was, the whole home inspecting, appraisals, none of it is, not even we are needed. So Alex is asking if in every sale or any transaction, these are needed. None of these are needed. They are suggested. Now, if you're dealing with, like Milton said, with a loan, most of the times the loan officer, or the majority of the times the loan officer, will require these things. Okay, but none of it is needed. Simply put, if you get a ticket, do you need an attorney? No, you don't need it. Should you? Maybe. If you're buying a house, you need a real estate professional. No, you don't need it. Should you? Maybe. Does that make sense? Should you inspect? No, you can waive the inspection. You can say, no, I don't want inspection, right? Should you appraise the property? No, you can waive the appraisal. They're not mandated. Okay, there's only a few things that are mandated with every transaction at a federal or state level, but these things are not. Okay. There's counseling. Counseling. The difference between being a counselor or somebody counseling or giving advice versus being somebody representing is exactly that. If you're representing, you have to give the advice while in the transaction. If you're providing just advice, you're counseling or independent counselor. You're just giving information and you're not related to the transaction at all, right? So for instance, if you call me and say, hey, Bruno, what do you think the market is doing in Newark? Should I buy more? Should I sell? What should I do? Right? Is it related to a transaction? No, it's just asking opinion and you're giving your opinion, right? You can charge for that opinion, right? Completely separate from a transaction. Is that like when you have to buy the first time home buyer course? Taking a first time, so you're talking about the government sponsored programs? Hey, just give me 1 second, guys. All right, thank you. So yes, those are considered counseling, yes. So there's first time home buyer courses. We do it for free most of the times. Some people charge for it. There are mandated courses depending on the type of program that you're going in for financing. Sometimes they're charged, sometimes they're not. But yes, those are called independent counseling, yes, or advice. Okay. Practitioners and consumers can get real estate education. Colleges, private schools, and trade organizations like us offer real estate courses and seminars on everything from pre-licensing to tax and exchange law. State laws determine the minimum education needed to get and keep the real estate license. For instance, one of the things you guys are going to need to go through every 2 years is continuing education. So you have to continue improving your skills. This is required by most states to renew licenses. Every state has different rules towards continuous education. Some of them might say it's every year. Some of them might say it's every 2 years, odd years, every year, anniversary year, whatever. But this helps you keep your skills and knowledge current. Other areas of real estate involves lawyers, land use planners, and tax assessors as well. All right, I'm going to briefly go over this. It's very simpler. It's very simple. Types of real estate property. They're classified differently. For instance, residential, commercial, mixed use, industrial, agriculture, and special purpose. I think most of you know the difference between these. Residential, homes, commercial, businesses, mixed use, obviously, commercial and residential mixed. Industrial is factories and so on. Agriculture is farms. Special purposes, public properties, schools, and so on. Okay. Usually, sorry, right here. A single real estate firm or professional can perform all of these services and handle all property classes unless restricted by a state's licensing law, but this is rare, right? Usually, small town real estate firms may offer multiple services, but most specialize in a few services, markets, or even types of real property. What does this mean? I'll give you an example. As a salesperson, okay, so forget the company itself, right? But as a salesperson, I would focus more on residential. And in fact, I focus more on multifamily residential. So 2, 3, or 4 units. I don't like, as an investor, I don't like single families. As a salesperson, I advise against single families. I always try to explain to my clients the benefit of having a multifamily first. So that's my focus. Can I handle all type of real estate? Yes, your license is the same for all type of real estate. I can help you buy or rent commercial or sell commercial. I can help you buy, sell, or rent factories. I can help you do anything, but I choose to focus on certain things. The other part of it is the market that you're in. I focus in Newark, right? While a lot of agents focus in the whole New Jersey. To me, it makes no sense because we only have 24 hours in a day, and I would like to get some sleep eventually, right? I don't like to get stuck in traffic. So I'll give you an example. The gentleman that just came in right now came to bring me something that was supposed to be here before the class started, right? But because of traffic, he wasn't able to get here until now. So it's 2 hours later. If you're trying to show a house to somebody in Atlantic City, but your next showing is an hour later in Newark, can you make it? No. But if it's 2 hours later, can you make it from Atlantic City to Newark? It's very tight, right? What if it's 3 hours later? Can you make it? Most likely, unless there's traffic or unless there's rainy day like today, right? It's not the most efficient way to handle your day, right? So that's why most agencies and most agents specialize in a particular type of real estate and in a particular area to maximize the benefit of their day. Does that make sense? All right. Now, if I cannot do it for myself, how can I do it for a client? Your first focus should be your client. What type of clients do you want? And what areas are you going to be focusing on? If it's outside of your area, you should work with an agent that knows that area. You got it? That's what I do all day, especially now that I'm busy with the school over the past few years. I've been busier and busier with the school. My focus has been one of the things that I love the most, which is referrals. My focus has been referrals. Or if you want to call it something different, you can call it delegation. I'm delegating my clients to somebody else so I can focus on what I need to focus. So anything outside of Newark, yeah, I'm not handling it. If it's outside of Newark, I'm giving you a call and saying, hey, Janice, could you take this client? It's your area, right? Or I'm picking the phone and saying, let's see, Zavdik, could you take this client? And so on, right? It makes no sense for me to be all over the place when I have to be here. You guys need to do time management, okay? And I'll address that better in a later chapter. Stephen, you can be a referral agent also, no? So we'll address the types of licenses as well. But yes, you could be a referral agent only, or you could be an active agent who happens to refer. I prefer being an active agent who happens to refer, because if tomorrow I say, you know what, I wake up and I say, what a beautiful day to help somebody buy or help somebody sell. I can do it because I'm an active agent, right? But if I'm a referral agent, doesn't matter what I feel like that day, I can only refer. Okay? So no matter what license you have, you can always refer, right? But depending on the type of license, you cannot do anything else in real estate. Do you get a referral fee that way? Of course. Of course. Any referral you can get a fee. And it's a matter of negotiation. There's no set fees. You can negotiate. The common fee is 25%. That's the most common. Can you charge more for the referral? Sure. You charge 30, 35, 50. You can charge 100% referral fee. I don't think anybody will give it to you, but you can charge it. Okay. All right. So residential property, home buyers have many motivations. This is why it's easier for you to start in residential than anything else. For some, sorry, stop for a second. Masha asked, 25% of the property price? I wish. 25% of the property price. No. So let me address that real quick since we're on the subject. If the house sells for $500,000, as in, actually, let's make it even numbers, $100,000, and the commission is 6%, then that's $6,000, right? Right? We don't get that full commission because there's a split, unless you represent both sides. There's a split between the selling broker and the buying broker, right? So if you're on one side, it could be 3%, it could be 2.5%, it could be less. If you're on one side, it could be any of that. It could even be 1%. It all depends on what was offered to whoever brings a buyer, right? So, Masha, my 25% comes from that side. So if I preferred a seller to you, I get 25% of that particular commission. If I refer a buyer to you, I get 25% of that particular commission. Does that make sense? Before the broker splits. So that's before your broker splits with you. Because my referral is based on the gross commission to the buyer broker or to the seller's broker. Now he's like, woohoo, yeah. Zabi, do you have to sign anything before? What do you think? Should we just give out clients' information to somebody else, or should we have it signed before? All right. I'm going to talk about it at a later time, but this is very important. Not see ya, right? You guys all know what this means, right? You know what it means? Who can tell me what this means? Keep it PG, please. Guys, that's not what it means. That's not what it means. I'll tell you what they're writing in a second. Shame on you, people. Shame on you. Thank you, Masha. Cover your assets. Okay? Because your behind is not the one that's getting sued if you screw up. Your assets are. You could lose your assets. You still keep your behind. Unless you go to jail. Then it's a different story. But while you're outside of jail, okay, your assets is what gets sued. So you got to cover, you got to protect your assets. Very, very important. And in this case, commission is your asset. So to protect yourself, you always keep things in writing. Okay. Never provides a client information to somebody else without having them sign something that says, hey, I owe you X amount of commission. You got it? Never provide a client's info without that. All right, so as I was saying, home buyers have many motivations. For some, ownership shows financial stability. A home is an investment that can and usually appreciates over time. And when the loan is needed to buy a home, the interest paid may be a tax deduction. We're going to cover all these aspects throughout the next chapters. Homeownership also offers less tangible benefits like pride, security, and some type of community belonging, right? There is a value to this. It's the emotional value that I told you guys before, right? It's the emotional value that people give to the property. It's actually also the value that drives different prices in different areas. So if you're in a particular type of community, the same house, same structure could be valued at $100,000 as a $300,000 house in another community. So the same house, same structure, but different values, right? Next, type of housing. I'm just going to skip right through. We have single family detached houses. We have apartment buildings, condominiums, co-ops, planned unit developments, mixed use developments, converted use properties, factory built homes, and so on. We will address all of these as we go. Fair housing. This is a big topic. We have a whole chapter on fair housing. Does anybody know what this means? Fair housing, without reading. Without reading. Let me know in the chat. Fair housing. What do you think it means? It says fair. What do you think it means? For everybody. Thank you, Zavi. Coney says no discrimination. No discrimination, says Milton. Equal housing opportunity for all. Absolutely. So fair housing means that whoever's involved in the housing experience, right? Whether you're the lender or you're an insurance rep or you're the realtor, whoever's involved cannot discriminate. Okay? Everybody's entitled to buy a house, to sell a house, to rent a house. Everybody is equal. The only thing that's different between people is their qualification to buy a house. Can they buy it or not? That's the difference. Other than that, you cannot discriminate. So we will have a whole chapter on that because it's very important, heavily tested, by the way, if you want to put some notes there. It's heavily tested. It got so bad that until last year, fair housing was not needed as a CE credit, as a continuous education credit. Last year, they implemented that every 2 years, when you do your CE credits here in Jersey, you have to include 1 hour of fair housing. That's how bad things got over the past few years. The discrimination level when it comes to housing. Okay, so heavily tested. All right, real estate markets. What does this word mean? Markets by itself. Not talking about real estate. Just what does market mean? The word market. What does it mean? Your opinion? A place where you can offer, exchange, what? Everything. Goods and services. Right? So thank you. Yeah, it's markets, whether it's real estate or anything else. A market in the word itself is a place where you can buy, sell, or exchange goods and services. Right? Some people are on the market for real estate professionals. So they're shopping around for a real estate professional. Right? It's our service that's on the market. Why do they need our services? So they can go to the market of real estate to buy, sell, or rent real estate. Does that make sense? So pretty much when goods are sold, a market exists. A market's purpose is to establish market value through supply and demand, right? Supply and demand. What is supply and demand? Who can tell me what is supply and what is demand? I know it's written here, but supply is what you have. Great. The amount of stuff that you have, whatever it is that you're exchanging, selling, or buying, right? And the need or the wanting of it. So supply, how many of these items do I have, right? Demand is how many people want this item, okay? So one of the things that happens is that when supply and demand are balanced, there's neither inflation nor deflation. Everything's balanced, everything's beautiful, right? Does that ever exist? A balance in supply and demand? Barely ever. That's why inflation keeps on happening. And we felt it over the past year or so, right? There was a need for something, right? So I don't know if you guys remember, and don't get political on me, okay? But you guys remember when gas prices were really low and everybody was raving about it, right? Why did that happen? Because there was a lot of gas and no demand. Everybody was home. Nobody was on the street. So there's no demand for that particular item, right? And then all of a sudden, let's open the doors. And flooding, people just flooded the gas stations. There's a need for it. What happens? Goes up, right? So now this type of inflation on the gas prices, it's a reaction to the market, like all the inflations are, but it was a reaction to the market. There was no need, all of a sudden, there's an immediate need. And people keep on forgetting this. I don't know if you guys remember here in Jersey when we had the last huge snowstorm, right? There was no rock salt anywhere. And the places that had it were charging 3 times the value for that bag of salt. Okay? But everybody forgets that. So let's blame, right? And I'm not bringing politics here. I'm not in favor or against any president, by the way. But I'm just saying people start blaming the president instead of looking at, wait a minute, there was a need, now there's no need. There was no need, now there's a need. It's called supply and demand, right? Because when there's a huge snowstorm, who are you going to blame? The president? Right? And I'm not telling you not to blame presidents. I'm just saying that sometimes I hear these, Stephen says, yes, blame the president for the snowstorm. Sometimes I hear people immediately start pointing the fingers instead of looking at macroeconomics. This is how things work, supply and demand. Decisions made by the company, that's called the United States Corporation right now, decisions made by the company could affect how high they rise or how low they go. But regardless, they're going to rise or they're going to drop because of supply and demand, because of people's needs. And that's what inflation is. When supply rises, but demand doesn't, prices fall. When demand rises, but supply doesn't, prices rise. So producers tend to lower the prices to attract more buyers when supply increases. And when demand increases, what do? They raise the prices due to the buyer's competition. Okay, they're competing for that particular project. All right, so how would you say the real estate market is right now? Amazing. That's what I would say the real estate market is. You want to be more specific on your question? Because real estate market is always amazing for me. Okay. My perspective on real estate is different than most people. So it's always amazing. Stephen says, not for long. Yes, it is. For long. Forever. You just got to know where you are, Stephen. How do you position yourself in any market? That's what you need to know. But real estate is amazing every single time. At one point, it's a seller's market. Okay. So gas prices are really high, as an example. At another point, it's a buyer's market, where the prices are really low. How do you position yourself as a realtor or as an investor? That's the question. All right. Is it a good time to invest in rentals? Sadly, it's always a great time to invest in rentals. You just got to know, Nadia, thank you. People have to live somewhere. Absolutely. You just got to know how to deal with the market. I'm going to put something. That's right, Emily. Yep. I'm going to put something out there. It's crazy, but in 2008, when the market crashed, right, from 2008 to 2009, almost 70% of the realtors in New Jersey quit. They went back to their old jobs. Do you guys know what happened in March? In March, the market stalled. It was going in an upward trend and then it's just stalled. Okay, it was already slowing down, but I guess people don't realize things, and it stalled. I was talking to a loan officer that was here giving training to our agents the other day. He says the majority of loan officers quit in March. They panicked because of what happened in 2008, 2009. They panicked now in March. They quit. Interest rates started just jumping, right? People stopped buying, right? So less and less loans are coming through the door, and they immediately quit. Like, why? Why do you quit something? If you have to quit, that means that the business was being handed to you. Okay? That's what I have to say. Real estate is always good. The question is, what are you doing for it? Are you just waiting for things to be fed to you on a silver spoon, or are you actually working for it? Because if you're working for it, you'll never run out of money. You'll never run away from what you're doing. If you let it go, right, it's because you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And that's true for real estate, and that's true for anything else. Okay? So, is it a good time to invest? Always. Every single day of the year is a good time to invest. Every single year is a good time to invest. The question is, what are you investing on? And how are you investing? And did you crunch your numbers? That's the question. Okay? Anyway, so we're going to talk about it later in appraisals. Real estate supply and demand. The uniqueness and immobility determine how real estate reacts to supply and demand. Uniqueness means that no two parcels of real estate are exactly precise or alike, because we can have two side-by-side 25 by 100 lots, but will they have the same value? No. One is closer to the corner, the other one's right in the middle, one is closer to a bunch of traffic, the other one's a little quieter. So even though they're the same size, same structure, same everything, right? They have different locations. That changes value. We talked about this earlier, right? Each has its own geographic location. Immobility means that if the market changes, can you pick up that property and bring it to a different market where it's worth more? No. Land is land and stays in its place. It's one of those things that you cannot transfer from one market to another. So that's what gives it its unique value. Location, location, location. Have you heard this before? Right? That's what it is. Location, location, location. It's the most important thing or characteristic of a property and its value. Okay? So I will address this. I already went over most of it. I'll address this later on. Another thing that affects value are supply-related factors. We talked about it. Labor, material, construction costs. If you guys know, maybe you don't know, but lumber and general construction costs went really high last year. Some stuff already started going down. Others, they stayed at an all-time high. Lumber had increased 70% last year. 70% lumber. You guys know we're in the United States, right? Where everything is built out of wood, right? So lumber was a major factor for building properties. If it went up 70%, guess what happens to the construction costs? In general, it goes up. So guess what happens to construction in general? Starts slowing down because not many people invest in new construction. Okay. So that affects obviously the value of a property, because if there's not enough supply or if it's overpriced, right, it reduces the demand for it. Another thing is governmental controls and money supply. So you guys know that monetary policies can affect the housing market. I don't know if you guys know or not, but the Federal Reserve increased the borrowing rate for the banks. The banks can borrow from the Federal Reserve, but they increased initially 0.5%, then another quarter, and they keep on increasing, right? And they say they might keep on increasing regardless of where we are now, even though it's the market kind of stalled, so the inflation is kind of like stalled as well, right? They said, no, we're going to keep on pushing. We're not going to ease on the banks because we're still not out of this potential recession, right? So the only way to kind of be out of this potential recession is to increase the rates, right? So they pretty much control how the money flows, and that in turn affects the whole market, right? But again, I have a whole chapter on that. We talk about demand related, obviously, population, demographics, employment, even wage, the salary levels affect, right? If inflation is up 8 or 9%, right? The wages have not increased more than 1.23 or whatever it is percent. Do we have more? Or we have less buying power. We have less because our wages are now going above the inflation. So we spend less, right? Because we cannot afford it. That also affects the demand. That's why when the interest rates went up, but nothing else went up for the potential buyers, when interest rates went up, all the buyers started getting cold feet on buying the house. Some, even right before closing, could not qualify anymore because things changed, right? We'll talk about more about that later also, about locking rates and being able to still close, right? But those effects. Population, obviously, the rise in population also requires more shelter. What is shelter? Homes, right? So there'll be more demand for new construction and so on. Demographics, employment wage levels, we just talked about it. Homeowner finances, I just mentioned it as well. I'll talk about tax deductions when we get to actual taxes and other tax benefits. So you guys can review that on your own. Let's go to page 7 under real estate investments. What is an investment? Who can tell me what an investment is? While they're typing, I can hear from you. Go ahead.
Something that you have a potential of making money now or in the future.
So it's something you have a potential of making money now in the future, just like that. Okay. Some of you wrote ROI. So an investment is a return on investment. So what is the investment that got return on? What is ROI? Where did it come from? What is an investment? You still need to go to what an investment is. Sorry, you're going to say something else? I don't want to know about the return on the investment. I want to know what the investment is. What is an investment? Making a profit. When you get a return on something you've put into. Something you put money in the hopes of getting money back. Spending money in hopes. Okay. All right. So
like now, I'm investing in myself.
Thank you. All right. So Alex is saying right now, there's many ways to invest. Like right now, he, and of course, you guys as well, are investing your time in hopes of a return on your investment, right? 60 days from now, right? Nadia says my RE license after the test. Yep. So it's not just money you put in, right? It could be time, it could be effort. That's an investment. That's an investment. Time and effort, and you expect something in return. But are all investments guaranteed? Are all investments positive? The answer is no, right? Actually, you could lose money, right? So for instance, and I'll bring it back to what you just said about this right now. Some investments are more active than others. I'll address that as well in a different chapter. Some investments are more active than others. This is an active investment. If you don't act upon it, as we mentioned earlier, not just in class, but also outside of class, right? If you don't act upon it, what will happen to your investment? It'll be lost. So you wasted the class money. You wasted the whole 75 hours that you have to be here, right? And you get nothing. So everything is an investment. Everything. If you got up this morning, you invested in your day. Simple. Because the moment you got up, you took action, right? What was your expectation? Mine was to have a great day. And I get out the door and it's raining. It could still be a great day, just not for me, because I'm not a rain, guy. Unless it's somewhere tropical. Definitely not Jersey. So I didn't get the return I wanted when I got out of bed. Anyway, so everything is an investment. But the biggest thing you got to remember is that investments is risk. Investments is risk. Simply put, investment is risk. It could be a low risk, moderate risk, or high risk, but it's risk. Okay? What are the advantages of real estate investments? Okay? There are advantages that will reduce that risk. One of them is profitability, right? In two ways, which again, we'll talk more in detail in the different later on. But one of the profitabilities is the appreciation. The appreciation, which is the raise or increase in property values. Appreciation is the raise or increase in property value. Okay. The other one would be cash flow. Absolutely, Samaya. Cash flow. What is cash flow? It's making money every month after paying. So we'll talk about it. But anyway, appreciation, the fact that you can control, right? So real estate offers that as immediate effort, where stocks and bonds don't. You have no control over it. Real estate, you have somewhat of control, because it takes so long, and I'll talk about it later too. It takes so long to adjust to market changes. Like the people that did not see what's happening now in the market is because they were not looking at it. They're not paying attention to it. It was so predictable that we would get to where we are now in the market. That's why I was saying, Stephen, that it's always great as long as you know what you're doing or pay attention to what you're doing. Stock market, it's a blink of an eye, right? How many of you, I know it's not stock before those stock fiends start attacking me, but how many of you had Bitcoin or any type of crypto? That's just the best example I can give you right now about how stock market works. All right. How many of you lost a bunch of money in crypto? Anybody? Let me know in the chat. Okay. Shani says, not me. All right. Okay. So if you do not lose money, right? If you do not lose money, well, hold on. You did lose money. You might have not lost in your investment, initial investment, but you lost money because it did get to a certain point, right? And then it dropped drastically. Okay. What you did with it, that's a different story, but you lost. A lot of people lost their lifetime savings on crypto. A lot of people lost their lifetime savings in the stock market back in 2008, right? The problem is, just like with everything else, if you're not paying attention to it, to the market trends, right, you lose it. Biggest difference, like I said, stock market, blink of an eye. By the time you try to catch it, it's gone, right? Real estate, it could take a year, 2 years, it could take sometimes 5 years to adjust to any change or trend in the market. Okay, so it's predictable. All right, so you have some type of control in real estate. Equity, what is equity? Does anybody know what equity is? Let me know what you know about equity. What is equity? Without reading. No idea? Great. Thank you, Katie. Asset minus liability. Okay. So Equity is not appreciation, because if the property does not appreciate, but you pay down your debt, you have equity. Equity is the difference between current market value, and what you owe. So the difference between current market value and debt or liability. Okay? So if I buy a house with 100% financing, how much equity do I have? Zero. No equity. What if I put 3.5% down? Then I have immediate equity called 3.5% down payment. It's called immediate equity or forced equity. Okay. After 10 years of paying, now I paid the debt down 20%. How much equity do I have? 20%. Okay. The market did great. It went up. So not only did I pay 20%, it went up another 30%. So now I got 50% equity. Does that make sense? It's the difference between current market value and how much you owe. That's equity. Value minus liability. All right. Now, why is this a perfect market for sellers to get out of? As realtors, you need to help your sellers understand. It's a perfect market because you have what's called equity. Property increased in value by itself. You didn't do anything to it. It increased in value by itself. The market is shifting. So you have free money. You should either refinance and cash out, right? Or sell your property and buy something better. Or sell your property and buy two things better. All right, depending on how much equity you have. Because until now, right? Until that property is sold or refinanced, that accumulated equity isn't cash. What's the point of having $200,000 worth of equity, right? If you cannot tap into it. And that's the biggest thing about real estate investing. You can tap into your equity to keep on investing, or you can sell to realize those profits. Until you do, this is considered paper profits. They're unrealized profits. It's not in your hand, so they're not real. You got it? Okay. So equity in real estate is, look, it's what makes you a millionaire. Let's put it like that. Equity in real estate is what makes you a millionaire. If you're not leveraging your equity property properly, and that's where leverage will come in, right? Then you're a slave to the loan. If you're leveraging your equity properly, you become a millionaire. Simple. Okay. Now, leverage. What is leverage? Leverage is investing with borrowed money. That means I have $100,000 in my bank account right now. I could buy $100,000 house, right? If I have 100,000, I can buy $100,000 house. Should I use all my money to buy one house? Most lenders, they'll ask you, or most loans will ask you anywhere between 20 to 25% as a down payment, unless it's a special loan by the government with government assistance called FHA, where you put 3.5%, or if it's a VA where you put nothing. But most loans require 20% down payment. If I have $100,000, right? How many houses can I buy with the same 100,000? How many $100,000 houses can I buy? 5. That's leveraging. Why would I put all my money into one property? Let me leverage. Okay. So that's what it is. Okay. A rule of thumb is to make small down payments, pay low interest rate, and spread out mortgage payments as long as possible. Okay. Leverage is directly related to the level of risk in an investment. Obviously, too much leverage or borrowed money increases the risk to the investor and to the lender. Conversely, lower leverage reduces the risk to both parties. So if property values drop, as it might happen now, right? Highly leveraged investors may be unable to pay the loan, right? Because the market value is here. If it drops and I have some type of financial struggle, can I refinance? Probably not. How am I going to get out of it? I won't be able to. Okay. And again, that's what happened in 2009 and over the following 3 to 4 years. A lot of people went underwater. They owed more than what the property was worth. Nobody was paying rents, just like happened over the past couple of years, right? Nobody was paying rent, so now I cannot pay my mortgage. I cannot refinance or cash out, so I'm stuck. And then you lose your property. Okay, so too much leverage could actually affect you. Tax incentives. Another thing about investing in real estate are the tax incentives. So if it's your primary home, you don't have as many benefits as if it's an investment property, much like being a W-2 or a 1099 employee. If you're a W-2 employee, all you can do is those deductions for Social Security and so on. But if you're an independent contractor, 1099, you can deduct even the shoes that you wear because it's part of your uniform. Does that make sense? When it's your primary home, you can only deduct certain things like interest on the mortgage. But if it's an investment property, you can deduct the repairs to the house. You can deduct the mortgage payments and a bunch of other stuff, as I'll talk about later. And that's called, so depreciation is one of the things you can deduct as well. It's known as cost recovery. Why? Because this wall right here will not stay forever here. Eventually needs to be replaced or needs to be fixed. So again, the repairs I can deduct over years. I can recover the cost of those repairs. If it's your primary home, you cannot. Okay. There's the capital gain, which again we'll talk about better in a different chat. I'm sorry.
There is a reason why we can recover.
So the tax benefits are based on the Internal Revenue Code. So the IRS decides what you can and what you cannot. An investment property is seen as an investment. So the IRS has specific sections of the IRS that allow you to deduct for these things. If it's classified as an investment, if it's classified as a personal property, it's taxed different. That's why every single person that's W-2 should have a side hustle, something on the side that they can deduct for. Okay, this reduces their liability on taxes. Anyway, disadvantages of real estate. Yeah, it's not all good, right? It cannot be the best thing in the world, real estate, right? There has to be something wrong about real estate. Otherwise, everybody would do it, right? There is something wrong. If you need immediate cash, no good. Real estate is not good for immediate cash. It does not have liquidity. Liquidity is the being readily available, cash being readily available. Okay. For you to take money out of your property, you need to sell it at a discount or refinance quickly, which you're subject to the lender's policies. Okay. So they might not give you the full amount of equity. They might not give you the full value of the property. You're subject to that. If it's stock and you have $1,000 worth of stock there, you can cash out $1,000 minus whatever brokerage fees, right? Real estate, if it's $100,000 worth of value and you need money tomorrow, I'll give you $20K tomorrow for that $100,000 property. Is that what you want? No. So you take a huge loss if you have a need for immediate cash. The other thing about real estate, the active management. You're constantly going to have to do something towards the property. Okay. Whether you're renting it or it's the repairs, right? But there's always something you have to do with the property. It does not self-manage. Okay. Obviously, the risk, just like everything else, there's no guarantees on the profits, right? So that's the disadvantage of real estate. All right, guys. We're going to go into a quick break. At the end of each chapter, there's always a key point review. So I recommend that you go over them, whether now during the break or after the class. But I always highly recommend you go over the key point reviews. And any questions you have, just make sure you bring them in the next class.